Welcome, everyone, to CDOs Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, and today I have the pleasure of introducing Michael Butts, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Burtch Works. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, Robert. Great to be here.
I want to go maybe and expand, obviously, to not only women in data, but also diversity in technology. And given the critical need for diversity in technology, what strategies would you recommend companies could employ to ensure that diverse talent pool in data science and AI recruitment?
Well, first and foremost, I do think having some type of advocacy program internally, but also partnering with an advocacy group pays big dividends. So we've mentioned women in data science,
Yes.
and you can go to the Women in Data Science website. You can see how to engage with certain programs that help with upskilling and general career navigation. You can also, like I mentioned, find Uplink, which is a way to acquire additional resources for employees to build their career and upskill. And then, it also provides companies opportunities to hire more diverse talent from the platform as well. The other thing that's really important is making it measurable. So having a priority in terms of, how the interview funnel and slate of candidates are being presented and selected really helps drive, that diversity, participation number. And then lastly, it just comes down to equality on compensation as well. And that's one of the things that, again, I pride ourselves on with our Burtch Works salary report is we do break down certain compensation medians, 75 percentile and 25 percentile for each skill set category. And we actually break it down just to show the variation on gender as well. So you can download that salary report, again, from our website, which is just burtchworks.com. So I think knowledge is power, and being able to have the data to understand kind of the current market dynamics, and then being able to set goals around those really helps move the needle. So great question.
And obviously, I love the fact that advocacy and reaching out to an advocacy program, I'm sure there's lots out there that organizations can reach out to. And plus, the individuals can be part of, because the more that you're part of that advocacy program, the more you might be able to get recognized, like companies like Burtch Works. From your point of view, how are companies adapting to the hiring practices to accommodate the growing preference of flexibility in employment types? So we mentioned full-time, part-time, and contract. We also talk about freelance, and let's not forget, during the pandemic, we all became familiar with the remote positions. How are companies? Because even in Toronto, we've seen a kind of push back to from 5 days remote to now 3 days remote. But how are companies adopting to this?
We're seeing it, by industry being driven, differently. So I'll give some examples. Many of our financial services customers are bringing people back in,
Right.
typically 5 days a week. And these are our larger banking partners to our hedge fund partners. Then we are seeing, certain industries that have afforded more flexibility. And this is either a hybrid model, which typically is 2 to 3 days in the office, or we do have some organizations within specific industries that are 100% remote still as well.
Right.
Specifically, again, for individual contributors more so than leaders. We are finding still that executive leaders typically have some type of on-site requirement. And this is, any roles that require people management.
Right. Right. And when you talk about, the full-time versus part-time versus contract based, how are companies adopting to that? Do you see Is it split by industry as well on that?
It's somewhat by industry. It's a lot by size. Some of the industries that we're seeing a lot of demand in is energy, life sciences, healthcare. Um, and it's interesting because the contract labor that we're providing is more open to fully remote. And when we're placing full-time employees, there's a higher likelihood that there will come a requirement of some type of hybrid.
Right.
Um, Now, this is interesting when we get into, as we talked about the contract to hire. So what we try to do is make sure we're acquiring contract labor for customers that we know if they do convert would have a preference of some type of hybrid model or on-site model to make that still an option. So if they do convert, that they can still adhere to the kind of the company policy.
Right.
But we do find that most of the contract demand right now is still more open to remote than the full time. And when it comes to, organizations from an industry vertical perspective that are demanding more contract labor, it's really based on the industry vitality itself. And I mentioned a few
Yeah,
that
you
we're
did.
seeing, that we've
Yeah.
also seen out just across the board in the market continue to have some favorable tailwinds. But yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It does, and I hate to put you in a spot, but because sometimes gazing into the crystal ball can result in some misdirections on forecasting. But if you were to look ahead purely over the next 3 years, because I mean, look at this past year, past 4 or 5 years have changed dramatically. But what emerging job trends do you see that are going to shape your particular area of focus in the data science and AI fields over the next several years? And let's maybe not kind of put it that expansive because things can change on a dime
Yeah.
on our sector. But
Well,
what
we're
do you think?
continuing to see a really, it's a great question, big demand for data engineering. Historically, we've placed a lot of data scientists who come into an organization and they just don't have the right infrastructure or ETL pipeline established to be able to execute against the desired business outcomes in which they were hired for. So, ensuring the infrastructure, that data pipeline is really righteous, within the organization is not only important for our data scientists before making a decision to accept an offer, but it's also driving a big demand because organizations are making a big push to have a very robust extract, transform, and load process for their data. We are also obviously seeing a lot around GenAI. GenAI has been, somewhat of a secular trend that has really kicked off this year. I think there's still a lot of, questions on how and which to use it. And so what's happening is we're seeing organizations start to look at their business differently and start to think about how they can enhance their business process with the technology that now exists in the market today. And what that has led us to is data professionals, specifically in the leadership ranks, and this is very relevant for CDOs, CDAOs, CDAIOs, becoming more strategic in nature. So we almost see, Robert, the CDO and the CDAO becoming more of a CSO, Chief Strategy Officer, for many organizations, which has been very exciting. An example of this is actually one of my good friends, Adam McKinley, who was the Chief Data Science Officer for Paylocity, just accepted the CEO role for Uptake here in Chicago, really driving AI and machine learning, strategic vision across the organization. And so we're seeing that strategic element be much more of a priority and must-have for data leaders. And so, I believe that trend is going to accelerate.
it wouldn't be, an interesting interview if we didn't have some type of AI, Gen AI, or machine learning type of question. But from the final question, Michael, how is this increased use of AI, machine learning, how is it influencing the hiring trends across various industries? Is it universal? Is it uplifting? Is it rising? Tide lifts all boats? Like, what's your thoughts on that? Final question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I will share with you that there are what we're finding is a really small group of highly skilled what we consider Gen AI or LLM resources in the market. And I think there's this equal kind of upskilling that's happening across the board where a lot of data scientists or AI professionals are trying to find ways to either gain exposure or gain some type of training, certificate, or education around more Gen AI technologies because they understand that that's going to be more of a demand or a requirement for jobs in the future. But we are actively hiring for many Gen AI skill categories within different sectors and industry segments. But I still believe that there's, at this point in time, a pretty still finite group who are really skilled just because of how long the technology's been available.
Right. Yeah.
So there is a lot of upskilling that's happening in that segment. But again, I do just kind of want to stress the fact that it's about how it's being applied to the business process. So kind of similar to how we described, a data scientist needing to have a really strong, ETL or visualization, process in place to be effective. I think in order for a professional to come in and leverage LLMs or Gen AI, a business process needs to be established in which they're going to, execute with the technology effectively.
Michael, we've covered a lot, and the depth and breadth of Burtch Works and its knowledge in the AI space and the data analytics hiring space for not only the individual but also management is phenomenal. We thank you for your time. I know that you've been really busy, and we really thank you for giving us this time today. We appreciate you coming on board talking about this. We certainly hope that we get the chance to have you come back and share your knowledge and experience on best hiring practices that retain and attract the best in the industry. So thank you for your time, Michael.
Robert, thank you so much. It would be my pleasure to come back maybe after our 2024 salary report launch in July and present some of our most updated data and insights. And always happy to get together with you and the CDO magazine team. So thanks for having me.
Oh, we appreciate it. And for our listeners, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Take care.